You want to be free. The first thing you have to think about is what kind of education should we possess?
2 words, death. 2 words, death, death.
Education.
2 words, death. 2 words, death, death.
Education.
What's up, everybody? This is Andre Benito Mountain, and I am here on the Def Ed Podcast. And today I have a special guest, Kalonji Jama Changa. How you doing, brother?
And I'm alive on arrival. I'm rolling with Benito. We in the building. You know what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I just want to introduce you to the people, just a little bit that I know of your work, man. A real active participant in the Feed the People movement, working with political prisoners. I've seen you going doing visits at correctional facilities, talking with people like Mumia Abu Jamal, and just really being out there, you know, raising awareness to what's going on with people who are behind the wall for unjust reasons, and also working with the Atlanta community, making sure that the poor have people to advocate for them. Would you share a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, man. I'm a brother like you, just out here trying to play my role. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get it in as much as possible, recognizing and realizing that we're on this planet for a limited time, you know, and you know, just trying to share whatever knowledge and information I get, fighting to make sure that, you know, Black, African, original people, the downtrodden, are not taken advantage of like we've been for so long. And you know, so to your point, I fight for political prisoners. I represent an organization that I found 21 years ago on June 9th, the FTP Movement. I run a podcast network called Black Power Media. I'm on the legal team for Leonard Peltier, another indigenous political prisoner who served 49 years and was just granted clemency by outgoing President Joe Biden. And to a great extent, I'm a father, grandfather, and I'm out here banging. That's what it's all about, brother.
Wow. So you got a lot of things going on, especially in this climate, man. We need work like that happening by people who are out there connected with the people. What are your thoughts about all the stuff that's going on right now and just our generation, you know, those of us who grew up in hip hop, how we should be responding and mobilizing in the midst of everything that's going on?
I think that, you know, when you talk about our generation, it's pivotal because, you know, folks like us, we come after this whole 60s civil rights and human rights, Black Power era, et cetera. And I think that to a great extent, we're like the last of the Mohegans because we predate cell phones and we predate the internet and social media and all that type of nonsense that pretty much distracts us. Yeah. You know what I mean? We come from the era where research to us was going to the library, looking in books, finding out for ourselves, so on and so forth. And we're in the era where you hit Google and, you know, or Wikipedia and you think that, you know, you got a PhD. You know what I mean? So it's a whole nother thing. So how should we be responding? I think in hip hop, you know, just like in all genres and cultures, so on and so forth, we should be responding with outrage. We should be responding with concern, because I think that sometimes when folks see, you know, people like us, they think that, you know, you're just an angry militant and you're going to talk about burning it down and all this other nonsense that don't have anything to do with what it is. Now, of course, I'm not calling any of that nonsense, but I'm just saying that, you know, the stigmas that folks like to place on you is they like to, you know, pretend that in order for you to be against something that you have to be a hater.
That's right.
You know, so I think that one of the things that we should do is find ourselves and recognize the fact that we have ancestors who fought for our existence, and it's only right that we continue that fight.
Well, I want to tell you, looking at the work that you do, it reminds me a lot of what I saw from folks like Stokely Carmichael, you know, who later became Kwame Ture, and then people like Ella Baker, you know, who organized the people, and just kind of had some practical solutions to some of the things that were going on at the time. You don't see that a lot nowadays. You see people from our generation moving into the political realm and running for office. And I think there's a space for that as well. But I just really respect what you're doing. I think we were all influenced by certain artists. Could you talk a little bit about how hip hop influenced who you became as a person?
No doubt. So first off, let me say, you know, those are big shoes, and I honor and I appreciate my name even being mentioned in the same book, let alone the same sentence as an Ella Baker, or, you know, one of my personal revolutionary heroes who I got to meet and spend time with, Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael. So I say salute to you for even that acknowledgement. And I don't even know if I could fill those shoes, but I'm grateful to be spoken of in the same vein.
Just understood that the struggles, the gains that we made pass on to the people unconsciously. Of course, as a disorganized people, we cannot do it properly. So when they yell at our youth don't know nothing about history, well, what organization did you join to help make sure that the history was institutionalized and passed on to the youth? None. Shut up. You can't send your child to the enemy and think the enemy is going to give your child its history. That's clear. So since you've made no effort at all to come together with those who want to give their children proper education, proper history of what's going on. Now
yeah,
that your
so
children
inspiration, we talk about hip hop. If I'm going to speak about hip hop, I got to talk about what inspired me prior to hip hop, because to a great extent, I'm older than hip hop, right? Yeah. So, you know, I have to look at groups like the Last Poets. I have to look at Gil Scott-Heron. I have to look at Oscar Brown Jr. I got to look at, you know, one of my favorite artists, Rick James, because it was the song "Mr. Policeman" that was one of my true inspirations. You know what I'm saying? That's a song from the I can't even think of the name of the album right now. I'm tripping. Street Songs album. You know what I'm saying? A lot of folks don't. You know, they play Super Freak and you know all this other stuff, but they skip over Mr. Policeman. Yeah. So that was an inspiration, along with you know Melly Mel with The Message. You know what I'm saying? Beat Street, all of that was inspirational. But of course, you know, and I can't forget, because when I talk about FTP, most people think that I came up with the term FTP from either I named the organization FTP from either NWA or Public Enemy. But it was actually the Isley Brothers, Fight the Power. So that's where that inspiration came from. True indeed. Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So to answer that, of course, Public Enemy, of course, you know, X-Clan, of course, Lakim Shabazz, Brand Nubians, King Son, you know, and all those others. And then later on, Dead Prez, folks like that, you know, KRS, Boogie Down Production, all that, you know what I'm saying? It all inspired and helped to keep that flame fanning.
Yeah, I was really inspired by the whole Native Tongues movement. And when we saw Dead Prez get kind of grouped into that fold, you know, around the Dave Chappelle Block Party era, I thought that was a great time for hip hop. We had passed the golden era, but there was a resurgence, kind of a renaissance of the culture. What were some experiences that you had growing up that may have shaped you, aside from the music, but just school experiences, community experiences? What shaped you? Okay, so I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm like, 45 minutes away from the Bronx, right? So, you know, of course, coming from family-wise, I first learned of my great-great-grandfather. He's a man named Sam Pace, and he was a Seminole out of Florida. And basically, according to family history, some U.S. Marshals moved onto his land, and they came to snatch his brother Aaron off the land. And there was a gunfight, and 7 U.S. Marshals perished on that day. And my great-great-grandfather moved to, he fled to Greenville, South Carolina, and that's where he fled to South Carolina before Greenville. And my great-grandmother was born there, and this is where I get a lot of my information from her and my uncle, so on and so forth. So I was always
inspired by that. And as a youth, I was always having parents, father who was quote unquote on the offensive side of things. You know what I mean? That understood oppression.
Okay.
You know that information was imparted on me. You know, studying Malcolm and studying the Black Panther Party and later the Revolutionary Action Movement, and just being around community. I grew up in the projects, but at the same time, I was always on a hunt, researching, studying, so on and so forth. I was wild, but I was one of those cats that you wouldn't see me being wild. You know what I'm saying? I guess I would be called sneaky, because the old folks would think that, you know, oh, he's a good boy, I'm helping him with the groceries, so on and so forth. But then, you know, I was doing some other things. But long story short, it was that. But as far as movement itself, as far as me getting actively involved, it was a poster. I saw a couple posters. One poster was a wanted poster of a woman named Joanne Chesimard, who we know as Assata Shakur. Yeah, so I caught that in the post office. And then I caught it, like, you know, they would have it on, back in the day, they had these little telephone poles, and it would have emergency phone boxes where you can call the police or whatever the case is on it. And I'm passing by one day and I see that post on there. I'm like, man, you know, I'm studying her. But then I ran into a poster of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And so this particular poster was saying that there was a rally in Manhattan for this man, Mumia Abu-Jamal. And I'm looking at him, he has dreadlocks. And he's like, you know, I'm like, who is this brother right here? So the train to New York to 125th or to Grand Central, again, is about a 45-minute drive. $7 ticket. I hop on the train, I go to this rally, and from there it was on. Yeah. I start meeting people and getting a better understanding, and that was the beginning days. You know what I mean? So, but I was always against oppression, and I was always against bullies. You know, so that's kind of I know you asked me one question, I gave you like 8 answers, but that's kind of what it was.
That's good. I think that the book by Assata Shakur, you know, was like a seminal book for a lot of us, man. After Common released his song about Assata Shakur, people started doing more research, which is a good segue to my next question. What is some music, what are some songs that really influenced you along the way as you were becoming who you are today?
That influenced me along the way. That's deep. And we talking hip hop right now?
We talking anything, man. Anything. Okay.
Because I'm kind of an eclectic type dude, man. So, you know, you'd have caught me listening to anything from Nina Simone to Muddy Waters. Okay. You know what I'm saying? You know, and just from the blues and all of that inspired me just on understanding how we can be considered poor or at the bottom, and we still could tap into the souls of Black folks, right? So, you know, music like that. Of course, I mentioned Rick James. I got a comrade, his wife always laughs and tags me in anything Rick James, because she can't believe that I would be into Rick James and whatnot. She thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. But folks like Rick James, of course, Marvin Gaye, of course, James Brown, you know what I'm saying? The OJs, because a lot of these different artists, the Isley Brothers, they had music that played to the soul. You know what I'm saying? They had real soul music, you know, and we can cross over and we could talk about, you know, the Bob Marleys, the Peter Toshes, you know what I'm saying, the Fela Kutis. So all of this stuff inspired me. But then when it comes to hip hop, you know, of course, I got to give credit to, you know, groups like Public Enemy, because of the fact that during that particular era, when we first got a glimpse of Public Enemy, it was the streets itself that was bumping Public Enemy. You can, you know, again, being from Connecticut in the New York area, you can see cars driving down the street bumping My Uzi Weighs a Ton, like they would bump Biggie, or they would bump you know, Nas or whoever later on, you know. So that was the inspiration. But to be actual and factual, it's funny because I just did something with Professor Griff recently. Shout out to him. And one of the things I told him in front of the audience is, like, when I first heard Public Enemy, I was like, this is trash. because my younger brother Jinx, who's an ancestor now, I had moved from Connecticut and moved back home, and I ended up sharing a room with him. And he was always bumping this tape. I'm like, yo, what is this shit? Because the beats and the track and everything, it was kind of new age at that time. It wasn't what you was used to. Shock and all that. Yeah. So it was different. So I'm like, yo, what is this shit? And he's like, yo, man, you ain't up on this. You talking about some revolution? You ain't up. I'm like, man, what you talking about? And I listened to it. I'm like, I could, because I stopped and I caught the lyrics and everything, and that's kind of what took me to that. And again, like you said, Native Tongue and so many others, that true golden era of hip hop, Rakim, you know what I'm saying? That was what it was, man. Kane, folks like that,
I got a funny Public Enemy story for you, man. Recently, I had an artist here in Atlanta make me this jacket, and it's like a lab coat, a teaching jacket, and on the back, I had him put the Public Enemy logo, right? I wore it to work. I'm a teacher in a school district here in Metro Atlanta. And so I rocked the jacket. It had some dope artwork around the front, and it had this Public Enemy logo on the back, representing hip hop culture, representing that revolutionary mindset, that social justice mindset. And so I wore it one day, and then maybe a couple days later, one of the administrators came to my room and said, hey, where's that jacket that you had on the other day? And I said, well, I didn't bring it today. And he went on to say that someone felt offended. They felt uncomfortable by that logo. And I thought that was interesting because I went on to explain to him that logo is about having the B-boy or the young black male in the crosshairs, always being under surveillance, always being targeted. It really doesn't have anything to do with a gun, right? But the person who went to administration never came to me, but apparently took it in a literal sense of like, this is a man and a target. And I said, this scenario right here is exactly why Chuck D drew that logo, because that is how we have to live. Right.
And it's who we are. And was this person, was it a European person or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's amazing how, they're so quick to be offended by things that they're guilty of. You know what I'm saying? Because, and not even in a literal sense, like you said, you're in the crossfire, in the crosshair, and they didn't have the decency to even come to you and say, listen, man, what's up with this jacket? You a teacher. Exactly. You know what I mean? And then you could have broke it down.
Yeah.
Give me the hip hop. That's rock and roll. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, man. So yeah, I see that.
We're still in a space where we have to constantly try to make everybody around us feel comfortable. Yes. And I don't want to play those games anymore. I just think that your lack of information is not my problem.
We're not. I tell them all the time because, based on popular belief, folks think that I'm constantly speaking to just our people in the angry militants. Mm-hmm. But, I've lectured everywhere from these Ivy League universities to, HBCUs, so on and so forth. And there's always, not always, but many times, oftentimes, it's more of them there than us, right? So, I tell them, it's not my job to make you feel better about yourself.
That's right.
And come here to make you feel comfortable about my oppression. In fact, it is a form of insanity for you to think that I have to make you feel comfortable about the pain that has been caused by your ancestors and by your colleagues. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's kind of like, mass media and propaganda. I was looking at the news yesterday, just in the gym, and I'm looking up at the screen, and on one screen, you see Fox News talking about how, Iran was targeting residential areas in Israel and so on and so forth, as if we didn't see that the Israeli launched attacks within communities in order to hit some of the quote unquote leadership of the Iranian military. Yep. You know what I mean? So, but when they do it, then, you know, I can't believe that they would do that to, as if their blood is worth more than ours.
That's right.
And then I see another news flash, and it says the U.S. is helping to stop the missiles that are targeted at. Yeah, I
saw that.
The U.S. been doing that. I mean, it's like they're sponsors of this terrorism.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just amazing, man. So I know I got off task, but I'm just looking at how they justify their insanity. It's like they'll come punch you in your face, and then when you drop kick them, you wrong. Like, I can't believe that you would, you know, break my jaw. Like, what's wrong with you?
But I think what's happening now, though, everybody is feeling a little bit of what we've always felt. You know, I'm seeing what the president is doing with the National Guard and the Marines, and he's at conflict with these governors and these mayors. Well, we've always felt that. And it's now like, okay, this is open season on democracy. That's what this is.
You know, they love to play victim. And it's funny because I did an interview yesterday, and the sister said to me, she said, because we was talking about ICE and everything, and she said, you know, I keep telling people we next. I said, we next. I said, we the OVs, we the original victims. We was first.
We were
first.
Know what I'm
saying? Yeah. this is the rewind. This is the remix. You know what I'm saying? Like your man just say, this is the remix. You know, but the thing is, we have short-term memory. You know, Dr. King said that you know, the people have a 8-day memory. You know, right now, I would dare to say that people got an 8-hour memory, in some cases 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at everything that's going on, and I could only imagine what's going on through the minds of those who are in the military or who are in law enforcement, who are in a position where you got to carry out an order, but you got to think, how does that order affect my community?
Yes, and that's a sad thing, because, you know, I still hear folks talking about, you know, I'm gonna spook the set by the door and all this, and I mean, you know, that sounds good in theory, but the state knows and understands you better than you know and understand yourself.
Yeah.
And so they know when they're putting you in a certain situation, there's going to be certain collateral damage.
Yep.
There's going to be certain individuals that's going to try to, you know, get on the right side of things, so on and so forth. But the reality is, and again, there was a point where I was hard on, you know, folks joining the military, so on and so forth. And I know a number of our ancestors and elders joined for whatever various reasons. And there are still many of our children who are duped and feel like they don't have any way out other than to get these particular resources or these benefits. But right now, the beautiful thing about this white boy being in office right now, Mr. Trump, is that he is showing you and reminding you of who they are and who you are to them. And it's not just, again, it's not just black folks. This is across the board. It is war on class. It is war on race. It is war on intelligence. You know what I'm saying? It is a war on life, not just humanity.
That's right.
And we must properly understand it. And I think that, again, he's necessary in this space and time. And I know a lot of black folks, their go-to is like, that's why you should have voted for Kamala. No, imperialism is imperialism. If my man, Dr. Andre Benito Mountain, is running McDonald's, or Kalonji Changa is running McDonald's, the menu's the same. It's Big Macs. Now, Andre, I heard he can make, you know, some crazy sauteed mushrooms on the joint. That don't work at McDonald's.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, I can come through with a nice smoothie and whatnot, some ginger beer. That ain't on the menu at McDonald's. So as soon as we try to bring in our own pieces, then we'll have a grassy nose incident.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?